D33DZ music. Who is that? D33DZ music.
Please join me, your host Unicorn, and Deeds, the hardest working host in the game. Deeds from music that show Christmas special. Please join me, your host Unicorn, and Deeds, the hardest working host in the game, for tonight's Deedsville Music the Show Christmas special. Good evening. Thanks for joining us here on the Deedsville Music the Show Christmas special. Part of the fun of the Christmas special is that there is a kid time and an adult time. Kids right now, it's our time! Woohoo! Santa Deeds is going to read a few Christmas stories just for us. The first story Deeds is going to read is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You know, the one with the shiny red nose. Well, if you don't, listen up! Take it away, Deeds!
On Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. Now, Rudolph, now! Merry Christmas! On Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. Now, Rudolph, now!
Who is that? D33DZ music.
There were many reindeer at the North Pole where Santa Claus lived. To deliver toys and gifts to children on Christmas Eve, he chose the 8 of the best reindeers to pull his sleigh. His team of reindeers included Dasher, Dancer, Prancer and Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner and Blitzen. Santa Claus fed them magical oats and corn so they could fly high and fast. He also divided his reindeers into 2 smaller groups, one with male reindeers and the other with female reindeers. Each one had a different personality and interests. Santa Claus had another little reindeer named Rudolph, the son of Donner and Blitzen. Rudolph had a big, bright red nose, and it was not a regular nose at all. Other reindeers laughed at Rudolph. They called them names, and never let them join their fun and games. That made Rudolph very lonely and sad. One day before Christmas, Rudolph went to Santa Claus and asked if he could be on the sleigh team. Now, Santa loved Rudolph very much, but pulling a sleigh all over the world was a very hard job, so he advised the little reindeer to stay at home and wait till he grew up. Overhearing this story, the other reindeers giggled a lot and kept making fun of him. They said that children would scream and cry if they saw his bright red nose glowing. Hearing this, Rudolph became shy. He hid his unique nose in shame and walked back to his home. On Christmas Eve, a huge snowstorm hit just 1 hour before Santa Claus set off. The sky turned dark, the wind blew strongly, and the weather became very foggy. What would happen to Christmas? Santa was quite worried. He was afraid that he couldn't deliver the Christmas gifts to the children in such bad weather. Santa called on his sleigh team to set off early, but it was so dark that he couldn't see the road. The sleigh got stuck in the trees and then hit the rocks. Christmas could be canceled because of the storm, and if it happened, the children would be disappointed. Suddenly, Santa remembered Rudolph with his bright, shiny nose. He thought that nose was so bright that it could act as a strong light to guide him on his sleigh. Santa ran to Rudolph and woke him up. The little reindeer was very surprised and delighted when he saw Santa. His nose even glowed more brightly than usual. Santa asked him to leave the other reindeers pulling his sleigh. Then, Rudolph led the sleigh team on the dark night through the harsh wind and thick fog. But the brave little reindeer still tried his best to fly fast. The other reindeers followed Rudolph's big shiny nose to stay on track. Admiring Rudolph's bravery, they also tried their best to fly faster as well. As the sun rose and the fog began to melt away, Santa had already delivered all the Christmas toys to the children all over the world. Santa and the sleigh team were warmly welcomed by everyone when they arrived home. Christmas was saved and Rudolph was the hero of the day. Santa Claus presented Rudolph with the Medal of Honor for his bravery. He became the youngest and bravest reindeer to ever join Santa's sleigh team. From then on, everybody loved Rudolph. The other reindeers never laughed at him and called him funny names again. And Rudolph became very proud of his bright red nose.
On Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. Now, Rudolph, now! Merry Christmas! On Dasher, on Dancer, on Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen. Now, Rudolph, now!
Who is that? It's about music.
That was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. If you think Deeds has an awesome reading voice, throw some emojis in the chat while we keep the stories coming. The second story Deeds will read is Frosty the Snowman. That would be cool, wouldn't it? A live snowman to play with outside! Just imagine all the fun we'd have.
Frosty the Snowman came to town one bright, cold winter's day. The first real snow of the winter had fallen the night before. In the morning, out came the children, and they started to roll snowballs. Round and round the snowy yard they rolled the snowballs. Soon, they had two fine big ones. Round and round the yard again, there was a little snowball just the right size for a snowman's head. Billy ran home and brought 2 bits of coal to use for the snowman's eyes. Sally had a button nose and a funny corncob pipe. Tommy brought floppy galoshes and a scarf for the snowman. And Joe brought him a pair of old red mittens to wear. Now we need a hat, said Sally and Joe. So they all began to look around. Sally found an old cap, but it didn't look just right. Billy found a battered felt hat, but it didn't seem quite right. Just then, down the street came a whistling wind, and it blew to their feet a shiny top hat. Just what we need, cried Sally and Joe. It's like magic, said Billy and Tommy. It was Tommy who picked up the shiny top hat and put it on the snowman's head. Zing! Tommy's head sprang back with a shock. It's magic, gasped Tommy. So it is. A voice, a deep chuckly voice they had never heard before. And a pleasant sort of magic, if I do say so myself. It's the snowman, whispered Sally, and so it was. Frosty the Snowman at your service, said he. That's how Frosty the Snowman came alive. Now, if you never had a snowman for a friend, you could scarcely imagine all the fun those children had. For Frosty took sledding, and they never had their sleds slide so swiftly and so far. Frosty helped them build a snow house and never had a block packed so firmly and well. They all went ice skating, and the magical part was that while they were with Frosty, the children could stay out and play in the snow and never get shivery cold. Was it Frosty's warm heart or his magical smile? We don't know, but whatever it was, they thought it was just fine. Each morning when the children came out to play, Frosty had a wonderful plan all set. One morning he said, "Let's go shopping today. I've never seen a store, you know." So they all joined hands and away they skipped, off towards the town where the shop stood in rows. It was fun showing Frosty around, for he thought every window was wonderful. All around the town they led Frosty that day, while the warm wintry sun shone down on him. Soon, they came to a corner, and around the corner came a warm, gusty wind. Off went Frosty's hat, and away went Frosty running after it. Then tweet, sang the traffic cop's loud whistle, and the children could not follow Frosty because traffic streamed by, buses and trucks and families and cars. It was just so busy. Tweet, went the traffic cop whistle again. The crossing stood empty before them now, but there was not a sign of Frosty to be seen. Only down the street, his top hat rolled, all by itself in the melting snow.
Who is that?
"Mr. Policeman," the children cried, "where has Frosty the Snowman gone?" "Oh," said the policeman, "Frosty the Snowman has gone away, where all snowmen go on a sunny day. But he'll be back at your bidding and call, whenever great heaps of snowflakes fall. And he will."
Who is that? Teach the music.
That, my friends, was Frosty the Snowman. Read by yours truly, Deeds, the hardest working host in the game. Coming up next is my favorite storyteller, Deeds reading "Twas the Night Before Christmas." Enjoy the story!
Twas the night before Christmas.
Who is that?
All through the house.
Music.
Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by a chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes did appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With the little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment he must be Saint Nick. More rapid rapid and eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop, the coursers they flew, with the sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed in all fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his nipples how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread.
Who is that?
He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team he gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Happy
Who is
Christmas
that?
to all, and to all a good night.
I love listening to Deed's Here's another story, one of my favorites from last year. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Right here on Deedsville Music, the show.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. The Grinch hated Christmas the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why, no one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be, perhaps, that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Who's, staring down from his cave with a sour Grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming. I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early, they'd rush for their toys, and then, oh the noise, 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 noise. That's the one thing he hated, the noise, 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 noise. Then the Who's young and old would sit down to a feast, and they feast, and they feast, and they feast. Feast, feast, feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beef. And that was something that Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they do something he'd like least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bell ringing. They stand hand in hand and the Who's would start singing. They sing and they sing and they sing. Sing, sing, sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming, but how? Then he got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked, what a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer, the Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head, then he loaded some bags into some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, giddy up, and the sleigh started down, toward the homes where the Who's lay, a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air, all the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house in the square, this is stop number 1, the old Grinch Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two. Then he stuck his head out, the fireplace flew, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates and drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums. And he stuffed them in bags, then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk to the ice box. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beef. He cleaned out the ice box as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food of the chimney with glee. And now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by the tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed for a cold cup of water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie and he thought of it quick. Why, my sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there and then I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head and he got her a drink and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for the fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, that old liar. And on their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who houses, leaving crumbs much too small for other Who's mouses. It was 1:15 dawn, all the Who's still abed. All the Who's still a snooze while he packed up his sled. He packed it up with their presents, their ribbons, their wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. There, 1,000 feet up, upside of Mount Crumpet, he rode with the load to the tip tops to dump it. Pooh-pooh to the Who's, he was Grinchiously humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up, I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two, then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry boo-hoo. That's the noise, grinned the Grinch, that I must simply hear. So he paused and the Grinch put his hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low and then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville, the Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Everyone down in Whoville, with tall and small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or another, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. Now, how could this be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes of bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't thought of before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel so quite tight, he whizzed with this load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beef.
Last but not least, let's listen while Deeds tell us about Santa's secret. I wonder what kind of secret Santa would have.
Dear Santa, I am your #1 fan. I'm writing you this letter because for Christmas this year, I only want one thing. Before I tell you what that one thing is, let me first tell you that I have been a really good boy this year. I clean my room every day, I take out the trash, and I even made straight A's this semester in school. The only thing I want for Christmas is to spend one day with you. P.S. Please don't say no. Sincerely, Carson. Hey Carson, what are you up to? Said Yuri. I'm writing a letter to Santa, asking him if I could spend one day with him, I answered. Wow, I bet it would be so much fun to have a chance to visit Santa, said Sinai. I told my sisters all about the one thing I wanted for Christmas and how much it would mean to me to be able to spend time getting to know Santa. I'm wondering what he is like, I said. I think Santa wears fancy clothes on his days off and plays cool games with the elves, said Yuri. Well, I think Santa is quiet and enjoys nice outdoor adventures, said Sinai. I watched the two of them go on and on about what they thought about Santa. I knew that it was just a matter of time before I got to spend the day with Santa, and I would finally know the truth. I happily mailed my letter off, and I really hope Santa writes me back soon. That night, when Mom tucked me in, I told her all about my letter to Santa. Mom, do you think that Santa will write me back, I asked. I sure do, sweetie, she said. Well, do you think he'll say yes to letting me spend the day with him, I asked anxiously. Carson, I believe that Santa is going to read your letter and say yes, but you have to believe it too. You'd be surprised at what can happen when you believe. She gave me a hug, turned off the lights, and I quickly fell asleep. Carson, wake up. I could hear someone calling my name, but I had no idea who it was. I sat up and I rubbed my eyes. I looked around and I could tell that I was no longer in my bed or in my room. Hi, I'm Fuzzy. I looked around and to my surprise, there was an elf talking to me. My mouth dropped. I'm Santa's head elf and we have been waiting for you, he said. I jumped right up and followed him into the hallway. He brought me to a big room. This is Santa's office and he will be with you in just a few minutes, said Fuzzy. I waited anxiously. I couldn't believe that I was actually getting ready to meet Santa. What would he really look like? What would he say? Would he be happy that I was here? I couldn't stop overthinking. Next thing I knew, the door swung open and in came Santa. Hi, Carson. It's such a pleasure to finally meet you, he said. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't get anything out. I couldn't believe it was actually him.
Who is that?
I got your letter and I've been watching you. I'm so glad that you want to spend a day with me, he said. I told him that spending a day with him has been one of my biggest dreams. He gave me a hug and told me that it was time to get started. The first place he took me was to his workshop. The elves were really busy making the toys. They sang while they worked and everyone just seemed so happy. Santa told me how Fuzzy was in charge of making sure all of the toy orders were ready to go to all of the boys and girls by Christmas Eve. Next, he took me out to see the reindeer. They were amazing. They were elves that brushed and fed them every day. The reindeer play a very important role in helping me get all the wonderful gifts delivered, said Santa. Then he showed me his sleigh. It was huge. Come on up and have a seat, he said. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen, Santa, I yelled. He showed me all of the different buttons and the tricks that his sleigh could do. He even let me press a few buttons too. Next, Santa wanted to show me his cookie shop. Yep, that's right. Santa has a cookie shop. Here the elves make sugar cookies, oatmeal, raisin cookies, peanut butter cookies, and my personal favorite, chocolate chip cookies, he said. He gave me a chocolate chip cookie. It was the best chocolate chip cookie I ever tasted. What's inside the cookies that makes them so delicious, I asked. You have to ask Mrs. Claus, but she'll never give up her secret recipe, Santa laughed. He introduced me to Mrs. Claus. Hi, Miss Claus, I'm Carson, I said. Hello, Carson, my dear. I know exactly who you are, and Miss Claus is way too proper for me, she laughed. Around here, everyone calls me Suge. That's short for sugar. After all, what do you think my secret ingredient is for making these cookies so delicious, she explained. She showed me all around the cookie shop, and she let me try many goodies along the way. On the way back to Santa's office, he took me through Elf Village where all the elves lived. They all lived in beautiful gingerbread houses that were all decorated with the most yummy treats. They waved to us as we walked by. They were all so kind, and you could tell that they all really loved Santa, maybe just as much as I love him. When we got back to Santa's office, he showed me his list. Wow, Santa, that is such a long list, I said. It sure is, and that is why I always check it twice, Santa explained. I told him that I enjoy spending a day with him and that this will always be one of the best days of my life. He told me all about himself and I asked tons of questions. Santa didn't mind at all. He just smiled and answered them. I couldn't help but notice that he was wearing a necklace with SS on it. Santa, what does SS stand for? I asked. He told me that as Santa, sometimes he must keep secrets to keep the holiday magic alive. I didn't ask any more questions, but I couldn't stop thinking about what secrets Santa had. When it was time for me to go, he brought me to a large snow globe. He told me that it was a Christmas globe that could take me anywhere I wanted to go, but this time it would be taking me home. I waved to all the elves and said goodbye to Mrs. Claus. I had so much fun spending the day at the North Pole. In the blink of an eye, I was back in my room and I could hear my mom calling. Carson, come downstairs. Grandpa is here, she yelled. I love spending time with my grandpa, and I couldn't wait to tell him all about my day at the North Pole.
Who is that? D33 music.
Thank you for joining us here on D33 Music The Show Christmas Special. Kids portion, now it's time for the adult portion. Enjoy the rest of the show and Merry Christmas from all of us in Deanville!
Who is that? D33 music.